Welcome, everybody. Thank you for today's discussion regarding Microsoft newly announced E7 license, how to promote it, how to position it, and better understanding it. Our speaker today is Sami Yunus. Sami is a senior security solutions architect and is the author of Into the Mind of Microsoft Security, highly recommended for any security practitioner or anyone who is interested in learning and understanding the Microsoft Security Playground. Sami, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Danny.
I want to thank you for taking the time today and go over with you the newly announced E7 license. It's a big thing for partners. It would be great for us to talk about it a little bit and trying to help partners better understand what's included, what's not included, and how to position it with customers or maybe on the business premium, maybe with or without the Defender and Purview suites, or even on E3 and E5. So maybe you can help us understand. Microsoft describes 7 as built for human-led agent operated. Practically speaking, what business problems would the even solve that the EF cannot?
Wow, that's a good and strong start getting to it.
I'm not gonna
No,
make
that, any- yeah. Uh, so so let's look at E5. So E5 was designed for the secure digital enterprise. We call it modern work, right? That's the term everyone used, which is really focused on protecting user devices, apps, identities, data, email, collaboration, compliance, all the whole nine yards, which I call like this is the foundation for secure and compliant organization, serving the organization digital state, having them operate as a modern workplace. So that's all good, and it's not
Mhm.
going away. So now what is E7? So E7 is designed for the next operating model. So what I mean by next operating model, this is what Microsoft called the frontier firm or the frontier workplace opposes to the modern workplace, which is where AI does not just assist people, but start operating across different business workflows and executing different functions. They become more of a digital police that can not just assist, can some of the work can be delegated to them. They can decide on certain things, and then they can engage the end user on approving critical decisions, for
Mhm.
example. So it's a different operating model, and this is where the strengths of E7. So it's not just, we shouldn't look at it as just a product upgrade. This is the next level upgrades for no, it serves certain objective, which is the different operating model for
Mhm.
organization. So
So
it's really about controlled scale for the
Mhm.
agentic enterprise. That's how I will position this.
Okay, but what if an organization already have E5 and they feel secure and they feel that they are compliant? What signals should tell them that E5 is no longer enough? Or what indicators should they pay notice to kind of say, okay, this is the time for us to move from our E5?
Yeah, okay, that's good that you are asking about the signals because this is not like moving from Windows 10 to Windows 11, for
Hmm.
example. This move is different. E5 still provide the strongest security and compliance for any modern workplace organization. It's still at the top, like there is nothing, no level more in terms of security and compliance foundation. So it's still good. But the question is, are the customers now start to change their operating model or
Hmm.
not? If they start changing their operating model, become more what we call like an agentic enterprise where AI moving at the speed of light, not moving from just being an assistant that can summarize email or help writing an article or run a search to an AI that carry on business processes. This is where the difference is. for sellers, they might be looking for signals because are they going to approach all customers, for example? I guess not. They have to spot certain signals. And the first signal is that they see a customer where AI adoption is now escaping the pilot stage. So it's no longer something that they experiment on smaller number of their user base, but they are start seeing that they keep adding Copilot licenses. Their users start creating agents. They start seeing more penetration in different departments. So that's the first signal, is that AI within the organization and the Copilot adoption is moving forward. So at that time, then they jump into, here is the discussion about the agentic enterprise and the value of ESA.
So I want to make a point here because I think it's important to make that. Earlier, you've mentioned operating model, and I've just asked about signals. And I think it's important to note here that we are talking about business signals and operating model of the business, not necessarily digital signals and operating model of your Microsoft operating systems, right? So there is a distinction here that we need to make sure that the audience is aware of.
No, thank you for that. Exactly what I meant is operating model, like new business processes, new ways of running the business, new ways of automating the workflows within certain business processes. So, and the signal here is that the first signal is when they start seeing the adoption is going beyond just being a limited pilot. The second signal is that what I call ownership ambiguity. This is where the IT starts looking around saying, okay, now we see users creating agents, or see agents, and the user is telling us that, oh, I now have agents that automate this business process. Okay, like who owns the agents? What agents are running in the environment in the first place? And what data that these agents are accessing, as these agents are using intermediary tools or connectors, and they're like MCP servers, for example. So what's happening? Like when IT start asking these questions, then that's the second signal, the ownership aspect of it and the visibility. And the third signal and usually the third signal is more you see it in regulated customer environments where there will be audit pressures coming into the picture because of this, especially for those customers who are very keen about staying regulatory compliant. Now there are kind of new entities playing around that have access to data. So if this agent is calling that agent, calling the MCP server, accessing this piece of data, are we auditing this? How we are auditing it? Do we have evidence in case we have investigations? So the audit pressure here is the third signal to indicate now I need to move beyond having a strong security and compliance foundation like E5. I need to look for something that's provide me with everything in E5 plus more things to answer all of these questions.
You said this would be relevant for organization in regulated industry, but I'm wondering, almost every organization nowadays needs cyber insurance. Would that be equivalent to regulations that organization need to face? Would that have the same impact?
Absolutely. So any organization that under the need to audit everything that's going on and be able, more important than audit, be able to produce evidence. So whether for to meet regulatory compliance, whether to meet like insurance requirements. So these are the same. I'm just trying to rank them by specifying the regulatory one, but definitely insurance. And especially nowadays, like most organizations, especially on the SMB side, are very much outsourcing SecOps to MSSPs, and with the MSSPs also, and with security in general speaking, we see lots of these organizations also looking for cyber insurance. And one of the important things in cyber insurance is that during cyber investigations, things can be tracked down, evidence can be produced. So again, now this all can be happening with E5, well capable of that, because it can audit and produce this level of evidence for users, devices, emails, and so forth. So, but now you have new players. What about agents? What about tools that the agents use? Are we tracking this? So that's where E7, and that's will be the third signal.
So for a channel partner, how would the inclusion of Microsoft 365 Copilot as built default as a default into the E7 changes the conversation when they're compared to trying and selling Copilot as an add-on to E5?
Yeah, it's a good one as well. Let's look at it that way. Organization who have E5 are now looking to provide their user with AI assistant, and they are getting Copilot. The conversation usually revolve around, okay, which users we can give them the license, okay? And then the partner is helping them, okay, like what's the adoption plan? How we can extend, how many users we keep adding to this pilot. So everything revolves around measuring individual productivity. So the whole discussion is about measuring individual productivity. The discussion with E7 is different. The discussion with E is moving beyond individual productivity into how we redesign our work, how we redesign our business processes. So that's a different conversation than just focusing on individual productivity, because when with E7, now we are looking holistically. We're not just looking at Copilot as a product, whether you're getting it alone or part of E7. With E7, the conversation is about the whole enterprise architecture conversation. So it's moving from who gets Copilot to how we redesign work and how we benefit from the package of E7. So if we look carefully at this part, we feel like, okay, now the center of gravity has changed. So in seller's term, the buying center is changed. So the buying center, instead of be at the IT productivity, providing productivity tools to users to use to enhance their individual productivity. So now the discussion is really got beyond the IT productivity discussion into a conversation that include security, compliance, business operation, data owners, executives. So the conversation has extended because of this. So that's kind of the difference. Selling Copilot on its own, that's individual productivity, selling motion, but selling is more of selling a workplace productivity, a business productivity, not just individual productivity. That's how I see it. So that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Basically, kind of like in my mind raises a question that about risk, and I'm trying to understand maybe what risks exist when customer, because you mentioned agents. What with Agent 365? What risks exist when customer experience or not experience but experiments and playing with agents under E5 without this additional layer of governance?
Yeah, okay, that sounds like a good question. I'll tell you like few off my head, but then I think I will ground it more into an example just to make it easy. And you always hear these terms and like presentation or things like that. You hear the term agent sprawl, and agent sprawl without accountability. That's the main risk, really, because agents are easy to create nowadays, and users can create agents. So it's not just limited to power users or developers, but now normal user can create agents. So they are easy to create, but how they are governed at an organization scale, that's usually the challenge. Like in terms of, okay, like I'm an organization, I need to know like, okay, do I have an inventory of all agents created by all users? Like that's the first question. Like who owns these agents? What permission the agents have? What tools the agents access? So it's not just about data sets, right? But there's actually active tools and what permissions. How long this agent supposed to live? Who approves the change to the agents? So the over permission
who
of
approves
agents
who approves acts for those specific agents? Who approved the access to certain data sets, right?
Exactly. Especially if it gets worse, because sometimes this access is indirect access. So an agent can make a call to another agent, for example, or through MCP servers or something like that. So it gets even more complex, I would say. So observability, like to be able to see what's going on, that's definitely a major risk. Add to this all what this means in terms of security, compliance, and governance. The risk is huge, and this can go like out of control very quickly. Say, for example, a department has built an agent to help employee onboarding. This is very simple stuff. The agents connect to SharePoint, connect to Teams, some HR content or email. Does its job. It helps during onboarding, speed up the process. But later on, someone decided to give the agent an access to bigger document library or more sensitive document library. And of course, they did that on good intention to make it more useful, right? Because the more you give the agents, it will become more useful, of course. But if this is all happening without proper governance layer, proper controls, those small convenient stuff will quietly expand to a major, I would say, I don't want to say the word disaster, but a major incident that involve sensitive employee data or sensitive customer data. It may involve some legal issues or some even worse financial data, right? So it can just go quickly out of hand. So within E7, at the corner, a cornerstone of E7 is the Agent 365. So Microsoft Agent 365 is provide this control plane for agents across the environment.
You've mentioned the agents and who's creating those, who is giving them access, who is terminating that access once the job is, if there is a time frame for that, which is very important. But one of the major differences between Ev and E2 is the Entra Suite compared to the Entra IDP. So from a security and identity standpoint, how does the full Microsoft Entra Suite that is included in the E7 extends beyond the Entra IDP2 that is included in the E5, and how does it help organizations control the proliferation of agents that is now being created by every user there that is interested in building one?
Yeah, that's a very logical next question. It is a question of intent. What's your intention around securing those identities? So Entra ID P2 is the strongest and securing identity. It is the identity security layer in organization. It provides identity protection, risk-based access, privileged identity management, and advanced identity controls. We can't say it's insufficient. It completely solves the questions of protecting identities. So, okay, so what's the value of Entra Suite if I said that? So Entra Suite extends this identity protection to control the whole identity access lifecycle.
Can you expand a little bit about it?
Yes, sure. What it really adds is what we call zero trust network access. So, and in addition to advanced identity governance. And then there is a couple of more things. These are the most important things. So what this means? Okay. These meant to change the conversation from is this identity risky and should the user have access or not? Now with zero trust access control and identity governance, the conversation changed. The conversation now is not just about is this the right user or is it the right device? It's also discussion, is this the right path? Is this access is to the right application and the right governance condition, the right policies in place and for the right duration of time? So it talks about the whole life cycle of access life cycle. So it's not just the identity protection anymore. It's the access, the total access life cycle. So for example, to be like more, I'll give you more real example, like traditional access when you work from home and you get access to sensitive data, customers usually rely to today into VPN patterns. So what VPN give you secure access to reach the corporate network, right? So that's what it gives you to verify you. Now you can securely access the network, but you are inside the network. How big is that? So with intra-private access and equivalent also internet access, and this is all governed by the Microsoft Global Secure Access backend, the organization can move more towards identity-centric access, where the access now is not just tied to the user authenticated, but also tied to the user, the context, the app that's being reached, and the policy. So it's not just getting from your home network to the work network securely, but it's beyond that. That's what the Entra Suite gives you, this whole access lifecycle governance to identity. So P2 still requires Stereo Core, but when you want to extend that to the full access lifecycle, and this is where you need those extra layers. And that's what's already built and now packaged into the E7.
So when you're looking at agents and E7, I think that one of the things organization need to remember, you have that side figured out with your E5 and now with the addition of the Entra Suite under the E7. Every organization still need to protect the applications, the data sets, and to make sure that those are protected as well and are not allowing anyone, even within the organization, automatic access, right? So that's the other part that needs to be protected as well. So I would urge organizations and the listeners of this to make sure that they have both ends covered and protected. I want to move, with your permission, Sami, the conversation to a more, I would say, value add and positioning of E7 versus E5, and maybe ask you, customers often focus on the price tag that comes with a certain license, right? I want to focus more on the value proposition. So how should partners reframe the E7? You kind of alluded to that a little bit earlier, the E7 beyond license cost and comparing it to their existing E5 and the price difference and so forth. Is what, in your mind, is the right way to go about it?
Yeah, it's a good one. Like one of the things that SLRs should try to avoid, especially in the early conversation, is just to focus on, like we have this new product, it's a package of this and this and that, and it comes at a great price compared to the elements if you purchase. Why I would need to purchase those elements in the first place? So approaching it from, here is the product, here is the capability, here is the savings that will give you. This is not better frame the conversation in terms of, again, as I said earlier, what operating model you're aiming to build in the next year or so. So that's a very important, that will shift the whole conversation, because E5, it's still very strong foundation for a secure productivity, generally speaking. What E7 provides is an AI-powered agent-operated workplace. So the discussion is not about discussing the product or the price tag or how good savings you can make if you get E7. The discussion is, what's your business plan? Are you currently using Copilots? Like, are you planning to broadly make Copilot available for all users? You're already seeing the value. You're already having those plans. Will agents becomes part of your real business flow, or you just stay as a chat application like a Copilot AI assistant, helping the user summarize stuff and report on stuff? So the evolution of the agent and the way the business think about their workflow and their processes, we need to see the intent there, right? Because that will be a very strong signal for the need for E7. And third, like, does the organization need to do security around those new things that your users are creating and bumping into your environments, and we call them agents? And what kind of security and compliance requirements are you obligated to meet or continue meeting while you have those new type of business processes that's going around in accessing data So between those kind of 4 questions, the broad adoption of AI, second one, the having agents as part of the business workflows, does your organization need to have secure those new types of workflow, and how much of compliance and regulatory obligation you have and need to continue meeting over the next period while you are doing all of that. So when the answers become yes to 1, 2, 3, or 4 of those, that's a strong signal to E7, because now you need to have a control plane for agents, right?
Mhm.
So if you're gonna, on the path for providing your users with AI assistant, you keep adding Copilot licenses, and you also want to have agents as part of your workflow, and still doing all of that and still meeting your compliance and regulatory obligations, then you need these different elements. Are you going to plan to purchase those separately? No. Now we have a solution for you. It's all packaged under E7, which give you good discount. So the packaging and the price comes at the end, not at the beginning of the discussion. And only then, to be honest, like whatever price tag, if the business, that's their business plan, that's how do you want to survive the next wave in the market, where most successful business will be the ones who have full adoption of AI. If they want to survive and if they want to continue that path, the solution is to get these components, and E7 offered them at a package price.
So
That's a discussion. Make sense?
yeah, to me it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that our listeners understand that as well. So there are 2 follow-up questions I wanted to ask you, and I think you've touched about it earlier. I would say in previous years and even today, many of the security-related conversations with the IT teams or the security team, depending on the size and kind of organization, maybe even the CISO. But it sounds like with the new E7, because the conversation is business oriented or should be business oriented, the other business stakeholders, whether that would be a CFO or a CMO or someone that manages those areas, even someone like a CRO and whatever, those would be the people, the target audience that channel partners should go after and have that conversation, and only on the back end bring in the whole financial conversation or pricing aspect of the event compared to the E5. That was the first one.
Yeah. So you're looking like, okay, we talked about signals, right?
Mhm.
Now I guess like you are more touching on, okay, what scenarios? Is
Yeah.
the question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the scenarios are very clear. Like the scenarios, for example, you start seeing out of your pool of customers, you're seeing customers who start having broad Copilot rollouts. Okay, that's continue to happen. So that can trigger a good conversation about the governance of those. And now you need a governance tool, and you're already buying Copilot, and you have strong security and compliance using E5. So why not get the discounted package of E7? The second scenario will be, okay, or the second signal, I would say, like we're seeing that now Copilot is not just user assistant, but user is now creating agents, and these agents are carrying business flow. So again, getting into the governance questions, right? The third signal would be around tools rationalization. Customer now start adopting AI, different tool set, doing development, and now they start adding security and compliance, different tool sets. So again, that might be tools rationalization, license rationalization. Now, why don't we just have one package that give us the whole 9 yards instead of having multiple packages, or instead of having different packages from different vendors? And the last, I would say, the last scenarios, again, what you touch on is the advanced security requirements to meet certain regulation or compliance objectives. And as the customers start adopting AI, these will become challenging. So even if the customer at the top of their game, but the fact that they're introducing new business processes with new actors, which are agents, considered to be actors, now maybe they are deviating from their governance and compliance targets. So how we get them back on track. So all of these like different scenarios that really triggers a good E7 conversation.
Okay. So it almost begs the question about the type of customers that channel partners, CSPs, MSSPs should identify when they're trying to approach and think about, okay, who should I be looking at to have that conversation? So I would maybe ask these questions I would have two parts of it. First, the actual organizations. Are there any certain profiles for organizations? I suspect that for smaller organization, it might be a tougher pill to swallow, even though in my mind they probably need it more than enterprises. And the reason being is while enterprise organization would have the budget to go through licensing implementation, they are moving much slower compared to smaller organizations that are very agile, right? And people are developing their own agents to help them do the day-to-day tasks and what have you. So it might even be more important for smaller organizations. So the first question, part of the question would be, if I am a CSP, what type of organization what is the profile, ideal profile that I should be looking at in terms of conversion from E5 to E7? And the second part of that question would be, what is the persona? Because we've mentioned it's not a technical conversation, it's a business conversation. So, in your mind, for the second part of the question, should I be reaching out to the business stakeholders first rather than the IT/security teams?
Yes, they are all good questions here because I have a short memory. So let me see if I can remember all of that. So let me start by the customer profile.
Okay.
I think that was your first part of the question. I think one of the mistakes maybe is that we will start looking at, okay, let's get a list of all E5, let's try to sell them E7. No, I don't think this is 100% the right approach. I would say that the evaluation on the customer profile should be grounded into their AI maturity and the governance pressure they are under. AI maturity and governance. So you look into your customer landscape and you're trying to put your customers into different buckets based on these two elements, the AI maturity and governance pressure. And then you prioritize. And I will still prioritize with those customers who are E5, but not just E5, who are E5 and already expanding their Copilot adoption. So only E5 customer, no, maybe later I will address them. But E5 customers, this is your first target. E5 customers who I see month after month, they are expanding their Copilot adoption because means that they are making progress on AI, and probably by the time you approach them, some of these users already start generating agents. If they have like a development shop or power users, more techy, maybe they also creating their own agents. So this is the first signal right away, and this is the easiest target is E5 who are expanding Copilot. The second one in the list, I would say back to what you just described, that some smaller customers may also be moving on AI. So it's not just the E5 big customers. So I will look also at Copilot customers, generally speaking, that are moving more on Copilot adoption and have much more user base for Copilot percentage-wise from their user population. So that would be the second, whether they are smaller customers or not, whether they're running E5 or E3 or business premium. So that will be the second category after the first one. The third category are also customers moving on this direction and they are under regulatory pressures. And the last category will be customers who just have E5 and sitting there doing nothing much. So maybe we can just get them into realizing the value of AI and what agentic workplace can serve them. So that's kind of my own ranking, I would say, because usually it starts with the easiest target. Easiest target, and they're already moving on with the adoption of Copilot. It's not just in the first phase, but now over the last 4 or 5 months, they keep growing their Copilot adoption. So these are the first on the list, and then move to all the others I mentioned.
And
what was the second question?
the actual persona. So who should partners reach out to, right? Because having a conversation about moving from one license to another with the security team in an organization would make sense, but the conversation has shifted into a business conversation, talking about the processes and what the organization is leveraging AI generally in Copilot specifically. So who in your mind would be the best persona to approach with a shift in license like this?
Well, it's a C-level discussion.
Mhm.
Have moved well beyond IT. Even I would say beyond the CISO, like the CISO discussion, still good, of course. But it's a C-level discussion because this is really about: are you changing your operating model? Are you aiming to become an AI frontier organization? Are you going to continue to work with the same business process, same approach, same structure? Or are you looking to become part of the AI era and take advantage of what this era has to offer different businesses
Well,
and
I,
overall survive? So it's more like a business discussion about the customer intention
Mhm.
and the customer business plan before we get. Now, when we have this customer have the ambition, customer have the willingness, then we move to the next level, to the CISO level. Like, okay, how this will change your landscape? So this will be the CISO and the CTO level. How this will change your IT, and how you're gonna make sure that your adoption is still secure, compliant, and governed, and you have full visibility, and you are ready for audits anytime. I'm ready to produce evidence for any potential audits.
So I think you hit the nail on the head, as they say, because organizations today, even in job interviews, right, when they're interviewing candidates, is the question that the candidates are being asked today: how do you leverage AI on your day-to-day jobs, right? If we are to hire you, how are you going to leverage AI to be better efficient, to make your job better, deliver better results? Organizations are now changing it. Their entire, I would say, culture and work processes. So the conversations are already there to some extent with every organization. So the fact that when a partner is approaching an organization to talk about shifting from E5 to E7, it is really a shift in the conversation in the mind of who you're going to approach, who is actually your customers, and who is going to be the one that eventually make the decision. Because it's not about buying this license or that technology. It's about changing the nature of the business, which then change the nature of how does your security architecture look like once we make the changes that the different AI agents and applications were introduced into the organization. I wanted to ask you about some maybe the flip side. What do you find as some common mistakes that partners should avoid when they're introducing E7? So we said what to talk about, right? And obviously, don't go in there and talk about it's just a little bit extra on your monthly price per user, right? That's probably the worst way to start that conversation. But in your mind, what are some of the less obvious mistakes that partners should avoid?
The mistakes, because the mistakes are kind of obvious, I would say. We talk about one, right? So which is obvious, is don't lead with price and SKU upgrades discussion. Lead with context, with a business context. Understand and try to establish this understanding of the customer AI ambition. Where do you want to take the business? Understand what's their Copilot rollout plan. This is very important because, again, like I said, This is number one signal that they are progressing on Copilot rollout. Ask the question about and trigger the discussion around agent strategy. Who owns, who approves these changes? Who's allowed this? How you keep track of that? You know, that's very important. Ask a question about their identity maturity. Like, are you still using VPN, by the way? Things along these lines would be important to understand, because I believe like when you put this all together, like this will drive the discussion eventually. But at that time, when the discussion kicks in, believe me, nobody will look at the price, because it is become a necessary to have this control plane for agents. Now, the second mistake is that I can say, okay, now your users, you're running out copilots, your users creating agents. We need to give every user E7 license. My organization will hate me for this, but I have to say it's not necessary. Right? So it's not all or nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
No, start in stages. Look at the hotspots. Okay. So maybe the hotspot is finance. Oh, finance is now having Copilot, all their users, they start creating agents. They are helping with certain area. Those agents, how can we govern those agents? We need to have those agents under better visibility than any other part of the organization. Let's start with those. So we have a good option for this department. Why don't we upgrade them to E7? So start with the hotspot. So it's not all or nothing. And don't make it sound like it's mandatory that every user have to upgrade the license to E7. They will eventually do when they see the value, but start with those hotspots and don't make it mandatory. The second one is confusion, and this is more technical, if I may. It's confusion about like agent license versus user license, like who's getting the license, right? So all licenses, we don't have anything around agent licenses. So it's a license for the user who create, who interact, who manages agents. Whether these agents are running as delegated agents, we used to call this on behalf of, or as more of as an autonomous agent. So there is accountability there and there is interactions. And these users are the ones who requires a license. And down the road, eventually, because everyone will have this massive set of agents, like you can't imagine like how many hundreds, thousands, like I think we have like 150,000 agents running in a Microsoft environment. Eventually, like every user will get a license. So don't worry as you as a seller, but just get it through the door, let them see the value and focus on the hotspots and get it there. The last part, I would say, like, don't oversell stuff. like, I think that's important because sometimes like, people have this tendency to oversell maturity or product maturity, for example. So don't oversell stuff, but just know that what you're getting as part of E7, E65, nothing in the market like it, right? So it may not have every feature you dream of, right? But it have everything that's necessary to start establishing this governance framework and governance and controls at a scale within a customer environment. And lastly, this is very important to CSB because sometimes not every seller might be aware of all of the offers and news that comes out and things like that. So keep an eye on the commercial details for CSB because sometimes it carries like really good news.
So here is a more technical question for you. Microsoft is not the only one that has agent building capabilities, and organizations are working with other AI platforms. How does E7 help manage and secure other AI platforms that you can create agents with outside of the Copilot?
Absolutely. So agents created inside the Microsoft platform will be the best monitored, managed, will be best automated in terms of controls, things along these lines, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So what about third-party agents? Like, and if you use third-party agents, so there are, I would say, two more levels of agent governance. There are those third-party agents who has adopted some of the Microsoft platforms so we can get more signals out of those agents. And these are almost all of the important ones, like from OpenAI, from Claude, and from other important platforms. Or the important one, like they already start implementing the agent framework and the controls so that we can get like more signals out. And then there is those third-party agents who has produced no signals that's useful. We have them under the platform control, right? Because there are control on Agent 365 managed agents, and there's still more agents might be in the environment, but they are not managed under Agent 365, but they are managed under the security and compliance for the platforms through Defender solution, whether Defender E5, like our Defender on Defender for Cloud. So they are managed under the platform. So you still have these layers of security, so no agent will escape. And for those ones, there's also like there is coverage like across the platform. But most importantly is that the important one, whether they are Microsoft or our partners who are adopting frameworks, are going to be under the control and can be managed through the Agent 365 as a control layer for all agents.
I have one more question for you, and this is securing the modern workplace. Would it be fair to say that E7 is about governing the intelligent workplace? And how should partners evolve alongside this shift?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you also phrase it like very nicely, saying that okay, E5 securing and governing the modern workplace, E7 is providing this layer of governance into the next iteration of the business model that's leveraging AI. So I think that's a good framing of this. Now, for partners, I believe that this E7, this next wave, is a lifetime opportunity for partners to completely move from just selling licenses into selling transformation services alongside with those licenses. Because this is a huge opportunity here, is to getting into a service-led and transformation-led services for partners. So I would say partners need to evolve from just selling license or even beyond selling license deployment services to more provide of a readiness service and start getting into adoption training for workflow transformations, for example. Security configuration and governance of agents, providing and operational processes like establishing ownership, business processes, technical processes about agents' life cycle and who control every cycle. There is lots and lots of technical operations that needs to happen alongside with the changes in the business operations. And they can even move further, which is I haven't seen it yet, so maybe it's a hint here for your listeners. They can move to what I call like a managed governance service. We have managed security services. We see few partners getting into managed data services, and now you can have something new. You can have a managed governance services. And for your listeners, if you're working with TD SYNNEX, you can contact us through Danny, and we can help you getting there.
If there's one thing I take from our conversation today, is that the starting point before running into one of your customers and say, "Hey, did you hear about this great new license from Microsoft?" is pause, identify the right customers, the right persona where a specific need arises, and start with AI readiness assessment.
That's actually, you phrased it very well. That's actually perfect. The conversation and even the offer should start with AI readiness assessment, because that's kind of trying to move from ambition to how it's going to work. AI governance is not something to introduce after the fact. You need to have AI governance and you need to be AI ready before you bring in AI and before you extend the usage of AI. Copilot adoption I would say also is important, because if a customer is progressing in adopting Copilot, then make sure that's a very easy discussion on 7 upgrades. Because as I said, like, this is your first customer profile, is those customers who have E5 and doing the Copilot adoption. So by offering those Copilot adoption services, and then from there on, as you start triggering the discussion on E7, just you can offer agent governance, and I call it agentic governance. Then you can move on offering security and compliance assurance services, just making sure that everything in place, that your AI, the AI governance, like everything have a solid foundation underneath. And lastly, help them with operations, with business operation and IT operations, because IT operations and operation books, they need updates because things have changed. So this is where you can offer these services on the operation side, business operation and IT and security and compliance operations.
Well, Sami, I think our time is up. I'm going to encourage our listeners to reach out to you directly, or me, or their TD Synnex Microsoft representative with any questions that they might have. And I want to thank you. I want to thank the listeners for taking the time. You know, it's we're right there at the top of the hour. And again, if anybody has any question, please feel free to reach out to Sami, reach out to me, or your TD Synnex representative. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.